ASCD annual conference in 2012. I was part of a panel of ASCD emerging leaders tasked with facilitating many workshop sessions with ASCD student chapter members, and she was there with the Penn State Harrisburg chapter. Although from my perspective, we didn't really talk much in Philadelphia, a few years later, she confided in me that her first impression was that I was very arrogant. Today, she's my go-to person to screen anything that I present to teachers. So in the spirit of Glenn's presentation this morning, the last thing we need are people with leadership titles talking like they have all the answers. This afternoon, in just 18 minutes, you'll learn about Jamie's path through life's twists and turns, a story that I've been learning about for the past 4.5 years. I'm so proud of her for taking this risk to put herself out there in front of this group of most supportive educators. Not all of what you are about to hear will be easy to listen to, which is why it's so important that you hear it. Some of the stories shared may bring up your own challenging experiences or those that you have supported students through. Based on my attendance at this event since its inception, I believe this is the kind of safe space for this kind of introspection and reflection. However, I'm sharing this sort of precursor to say that if you feel the need to excuse yourself at any point, you should feel perfectly comfortable doing that. So back to Jamie. In just her 4th year of teaching, Jamie has become a highly respected member of the team at Aughton Road Intermediate School in Hillsborough, New Jersey. She fuels other teachers' passions for learning by leading technology integration in the one-to-one classroom setting as a technology turnkey trainer and as a founding member of her school's education Twitter committee. Through the guise of teaching reading, writing, and social studies, Jamie has inspired hundreds of 5th and 6th graders as they embark on their own journeys of self-discovery. She honors her students where they are and works to cultivate their passions so they can discover the role they are meant to play in the world. Please join me in welcoming Jamie Cameron to share how she came to cultivate her pathway.
Thank you. All right. Hi. I want to point out really quickly that I dressed like my Bitmoji so that everybody could find me really easily on Twitter, because that's my Twitter profile picture. So that's me if you get lost. I'm really excited to be here today, and I have already heard a lot of really great stories, and I hope that you can take something out of mine. When Barry originally asked me a while ago if I wanted to speak today, I immediately said yes. And I really didn't think about all of that and what it entailed. I just kind of knew, yeah, let's go for it. I've always been kind of a risk taker, like a leap before you look person, but that usually works out in my benefit. I mean, there was this one time that comes to mind when I was 4 years old. I was at the grocery store with my mom, and I really wanted SpaghettiOs. Right? And you're like, why is she up here talking about SpaghettiOs? Well, I really wanted these SpaghettiOs, and being the risk taker that I am, I decided that I was gonna go for them. And that ended with me diving out of a shopping cart and landing on my head bawling, and my mother going, OMG, because, you know, her baby was hurt. I was okay, it was just a matter of a few bumps and bruises, but in the end, I got my SpaghettiOs. So I'm saying, hey, my risk paid off, right? At any rate, I was really blessed with a lot of time to think about what I wanted to say to all of you today. And it made me realize that I had no clue what in the world I was going to say to any of you. I was here last year, well, not here at TCNJ, it was at the other location, but I got to meet a room full of some amazingly inspiring people. And everybody had a story to tell. And I left there knowing that as a new teacher, you are the people I want in my circle. You're the people that inspire me to be the best teacher that I can be. So now I had to figure out what I was going to say. So like any good student, I started researching ideas, what could I talk about? And I started reaching out to this network that I have at my disposal, and I asked them, what could I, a 4th year teacher, possibly say that would leave an impression on you in the manner that you've done so with me? I was stuck. I was really beginning to feel wildly underqualified when someone told me, you'll crush this. Your story is uniquely yours. It's a story of resilience and redemption. I don't know where you are, but thank you, Barry. That came from Barry. So now, you know I'm a risk taker, but to my detriment, I've also always been just a little bit of a procrastinator. So it should come as no surprise to you that I waited until about a week ago to open up my original notes and try and take a stab at this whole what am I gonna say thing. But I kind of started digging in and thinking about, all of the people that were important to me. And I just put myself down at my desk and I opened up my laptop and I said, all right, I got this. So I'm sitting there, staring at the screen, cup of coffee in hand, typing, deleting, and finally, it hit me. I had a brilliant idea. I should go organize the basement. You see, Matt and I moved into this new house in January, and they've been sitting there for 8 months, so clearly it was time for me to go and tackle those boxes, right? Yeah, procrastinator. So thankfully, my distraction really did lead me to discover my story. Because as I was thinking about it, cultivating my calling, well, that's my story. Who am I? How did I get here? Why do I do what I do? So, who am I? Well, I already told you I'm still pretty new at this teaching thing. I am a career switcher. I've done a lot of different things, and I bring with me experiences that are uniquely mine. I was born and raised in California. My mom was just 19 when she had me. She was really just a kid herself in a lot of regards. And my dad, well, I'm not so sure he ever grew up. This is one of the few pictures I have of the three of us together as a child. You can see my dad is proposing to my mom. It's Christmas morning. It's a really great moment. But yeah, this whole situation, it never actually panned out the way everybody planned. Instead, my parents decided to spend my formative years battling over everything. I spent most of my childhood in and out of the courthouse, where they battled over custody issues. It was great. My dad was really an absentee parent from the time I was 3 until I was 11. Eventually, he re-entered the picture, but it wasn't until I was an adult. It was okay, but it was always a bumpy road. It wasn't all bad, though, because my dad brought Cecily, my amazing stepmother, and my 2 adorable little sisters, Danielle and Kerrigan, into my life, and I absolutely do not know what I would do without them. So, my mom, well, let's just say she had a lot of friends. Eventually, she settled down with Rick. We'll skip that one. She settled down with Rick, and, he was okay, but eventually Rick became the nastiest 4-letter word that I knew. You see, Rick, as charming as he was in the beginning, came with a bit of a checkered past that I didn't learn until much later. For a while, things seemed really good. We moved around a lot, which as educators we all know can be difficult for kids, but my mom had this way of making it all seem like a great big adventure. Eventually, my mom, Rick, and Jason and I all moved to Apple Valley, California, where I started to put down some roots. I attended Mariana Elementary School, and it was here that I met Mr. Mark Paul Garrett, who was my inspiration for becoming a teacher. He is the definition of a great teacher. He cared about me, genuinely. When we read The Secret Garden in his class and I bawled my eyes out, he just handed me tissues and told Jimmy Baca to hush his giggles because it really wasn't necessary. He built a classroom where it was safe to ask questions, to challenge ideas, to build relationships, and so much of what I do in my own classroom comes back to what I learned from him. So now elementary school turned into middle school and then high school, and I thought, wow, our roots stuck. And then, without warning, a month after my freshman year had started, my parents decided to move us to, of all places, Georgia. Talk about culture shock. I went from the Golden State and its glorious beaches, where I was a frequent visitor, to Well, 500 acres and somebody else's cow in my backyard. My parents had ruined my life as far as I was concerned. Now, don't get me wrong, Georgia's great. It's a lovely state and the people are wonderful. It was just that my parents had, ruined my life. And then they did. Like, they really, actually did ruin my life. Perhaps my story should come with a disclaimer. To some degree, it did. I told you it's a story of resilience and redemption. You see, I lived with my mother and my stepfather who were both mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive. I spent much of my adolescence battling with depression and a strong desire to make all of the hurting stop. I restarted high school at Tri-County High School in Buena Vista, Georgia, and I figured there was really no point in getting too attached to anyone or anything. It could all be upended in the blink of an eye. Luckily, TCHS became my safe haven. From the time I got on the bus at 6:45 a.m. until the time I returned to my house of terror at 4:30 p.m., I was a bit more free. I could hide behind my textbooks, I could hide behind my love of reading and writing and my passion for government, and I could escape real life. Mr. McGlawn, my guidance counselor, was like everyone's adopted dad, especially mine. He had this calming nature to him that made the world less scary. And I was doubly lucky to have his daughter. Miss McGlawn is one of my teachers. She was amazing. She created a safe space for me in school, but then she took it one step further by letting me know in my moments of crisis that her home was open to me. She taught me that adults could be positive people who could build me up instead of constantly tearing me down. These educators, along with some of my amazing friends, Bonnie and Chris, who I still talk to, are responsible for saving my life repeatedly. And for that, I am eternally grateful. During my tenure in high school, a lot of drama occurred in my house. You've all heard the stories of students who have to deal with screaming parents, abuse, substance problems, and a gamut of other unthinkable actions. I lived them. I was the kid that was clumsy and gave herself a black eye after falling. I was the kid that missed 2 weeks of school after having a concussion because of a blow to the head by Rick. I was the kid that slept behind a locked bedroom door, cradling a baseball bat just to feel a little bit more protected. I was the kid that tried to hide it all and felt utterly broken. It got so bad, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave. I moved out when I was barely 16 years old. And I'll spare you the truly awful details, but I must point out that resilience was born as I picked myself up off of the ground, my body surrounded by a shattered sliding glass door. I left knowing that I would never be returning. And that was a terrifying feat. I mean, after all, what the hell was I supposed to do by myself at 16 years old? Well, I'll tell you. I moved in with one of my friends and her dad, who I lovingly referred to as Papa Bear. Without question, he and Kelly took me in and fed me and clothed me and protected me and helped me finish high school. But then what? I had no money for college. I had no way to take care of myself. I was at the mercy of people who didn't have to show me an ounce of kindness, but did anyways. I graduated in May 2003, and I joined the U.S. Army. Joining the military was something I had known I would do for a very long time. Initially, it was my mother's plan. Join the Army, work for JAG, retire from the military after 20, start my own law firm, and then go into politics where I would have been the first female president. But I didn't know what to do. I figured I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I might as well follow through. So in June 2003, I shipped off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. I spent the next 9 weeks being broken and rebuilt. My mind, body, and soul were challenged in new ways. Ways that a lot of my friends questioned whether or not I would be able to handle. But I knew I could. In fact, I had to prove to myself that I could. I was determined to show everybody just how tough I was and just how far I would go. I survived basic training and I came out a much different person. A take-no-nonsense person, a driven person, and definitely a much physically stronger person. Seriously, I wish I could go back to 18-year-old soldier Jamie's body. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life. But most importantly, I was able to start over, which is something that not everybody gets a chance to do in life. I did move on after basic to become a paralegal in the Judge Advocate General Corps, JAG, and no, it was nothing like the TV show. There were no hunky Marines named Harm in my office. I worked at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and I learned a lot about myself as a person. And if you had asked me when I got there in December 2003 what my plans were, well, it would have been follow the plan my mother had put in my head. What else was I going to do? Unfortunately, while serving, I suffered from a heat stroke that led to debilitating migraines and a slew of other issues. I was honorably medically retired from the Army and left to figure out what comes next. Again. At this point, you can imagine my frustration with having to start over again. What now? I couldn't go home. I hadn't talked to my mother, nor had the desire to in, 6 years. I had, at this point, reignited a relationship with my father, but like I told you, it was a bumpy road. He tried really hard to be there for me, but so often he was consumed in his own life that he just didn't know what to do or how to be a dad. I knew he was not dependable, and I couldn't count on him. But luckily, I had Cecily, my stepmom. See, most people at this point in time just assume that she's my real mom because she might as well be. She's always been there for me. So I moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it took me a while to find my footing. I really struggled with my depression and trying to figure out what comes next. I felt like a hot mess with no way to extinguish the flames that were surrounding me. But Cecily and my sisters were there with me every step of the way. I started working for an advertising company and then took my turn in the world of retail at JCPenney's, which was clearly not for me. I don't know how many of you have worked retail, but the customer is not always right. But while I was there, I did meet somebody who changed my life forever. I met Matt Light, my daughter's father. We started dating, and then after 3 months, found out, surprise, you're gonna have a baby. And considering I had some medical complications that should have made this, really difficult, maybe even not possible at all, I was shocked. And then I was terrified because I was 23 years old and I thought my life is morphing into my mother's. And what a horrible thing that would be. I struggled with the decision of whether or not I was ready to raise a baby. But now, looking back, I could not exist without my daughter, Tegan Celia Light. July 14th, 2009 is a day that I found a new purpose in life. I'm sure that any parent in this room can relate to the overwhelming feelings of love that swell inside you when you think of your children. And I have all that. But for me, Tegan was another chance to start over, to right a wrong, to prove that I was not my mother. When I was really young, my mom was my hero. And then she failed me. I will not be my mother. And I will never failed Tegan. Because of Tegan, someone else in my life had a chance to start over. My dad. For all the things he had done wrong as a father, he was doing right as a grandfather, or pop-up as we call him. It wasn't spoiling her with gifts that made him a better grandfather. It was the fact that he was there. Whenever he had an opportunity to fly in from California, he did. He called, he Skyped, he sent packages, he sent video messages. He had found his light, and it was amazing. I had never loved my dad so much as when I saw him holding my daughter. Our family drama and our baggage was finally starting to disappear. Things were good, or at least it seemed so on the surface. In March 2010, I lost my father to suicide. It was so tremendously unfair. This was not supposed to happen. Things were better for all of us, and then gone. I got the phone call, and then I had to call my Oma and Opa and tell them that their son was gone. I had to call my aunts and tell them that their brother was gone. I had to call my baby sisters and tell them that their dad was gone. I had been broken before, but this was a whole new level of destruction. My world began to spiral out of control again, and I did not know what to do. I did know that I had to put on my strong face, my armor. I had to protect the people I love. And in the whirlwind that followed my father's passing, I was left to clean up all of the pieces. I think I'm still, clearly, after 7 years, learning how to cope with all of that. I'll give you a moment to collect yourselves. We're in the home stretch, and I promise it does get better. After being knocked down for what felt like the 20th time, I knew that I had to find my passion and my true happiness before it was too late. I got another fresh start, which led me to Penn State and eventually to who I am now, a teacher. My journey brought me here to New Jersey, to 278 students, 1 teacher tribe, and my biggest support system, my family, Matt Mingle and Tegan Celia Light. 4 years later, I know that like anything else, like any other job, and I've had many, there is always going to be a challenge to tackle. I know that as a teacher, I have a great responsibility to my students and filling their brains with the knowledge that will carry them forward in this world. I know that I'm held accountable for the standards against which my students will be measured. And I know that while these things are purposeful, they are not the reasons I became a teacher. I teach to ensure that the hundreds of students I've already encountered and the hundreds of students that I will encounter in the years to come know that someone loves them, will always protect them, wants amazing things for them in this life, and gives them their own opportunities for a fresh start. Thank you.